Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia here, and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup of Season 2019. So, not so long ago, we had a look at the teams that I thought had done the poorest in the off-season so far in terms of their transfers. And now it's time to look at the teams that perhaps have done the best so far in their transfer windows. And to be quite honest, there are some interesting picks in here. So go ahead and tell me what yours are in the comment section below, because to be quite honest, a lot of the top teams haven't made massive changes, and I'm talking about the likes of San Francisco Shurk. Vancouver can't be included on this list because I think they're too unpredictable with the signings that they've made. So this top 5 is not going to include the top 3 from last year. That's for sure. But let's get into this, shall we? So at number 5, I've got a controversial pick, and this is London Spitfire. Now, London Spitfire have made the biggest changes in this transfer window so far, i.e. they've only got one player left from last season, and that's Krillin. So they've signed Banar, Fuse, Shui, JMac, Hailey, Sanguinar, and Glister from a variety of teams. There's been Gen G, there's Gen B, there's Seoul Dynasty, there's all sorts of teams coming out here. But it's a very Frankenstein roster right now that looks at London Spitfire, and they are not done with their transfers yet. I'm interested to see who they bring in on top of what they've already got. Now, yeah, they've lost very good players, the likes of Gesture, Prophet, Fury, and these players were fantastic for London Spitfire. But I also think that there is a concerted effort at London Spitfire and the parents C9 to have a new era here. The era of London Spitfire's inaugural winning team is over. There's only like one coach remaining from that a massive team, which is Agape, right? He's now head coach at the London Spitfire, but I think what puts London Spitfire on this list for me is not necessarily the signings they've made. I think their signings, and I've been looking at them individually on their streams and stuff like that, I think their signings are really good. Don't get me wrong. I think individually these players are good. But can they be worked together, and can they be brought together to work really well as a team? Because they're from so many different places. There's not a lot of already built up synergy here, apart from Fuse and Banar maybe. You've got Shui, who was at Runaway. You've got JMac, who is at LGE Higher. And then you've got Hailey, who was at Seoul. Sanguinar, who was at Gen B, the Academy of Gen G, which is the Academy of Seoul. And then Glister, who was at Gen G. So there's a lot of different parts here for London. The question is, can they bring it together? And I think the coaching staff that London have got, now they've brought in Pavane, who works very well with Agape from his time in Korea. And then Awesome Guy is a really good coach as well. And then you got Twinkle. I really think these guys could make this team into a really good team. Now, if we were talking about the coaching lineup for London Spitfire from last year, I would have been saying I have extreme doubts about this London team. And they wouldn't have been on this list. But purely because of their coaching lineup right now, and the young quality that they brought in, they sneak onto this list. But it should be interesting to see how it works. This is honestly the most unpredictable team right now is London Spitfire. So I'm willing to take a punt on the team from the UK. But it remains to be seen whether that's the right thing to do. At number 4, we have the Seoul Dynasty. So at the start of the transfer window, things looked really good for Seoul. Really good, because they signed Prophet and Gesture. And this duo is like a crazy duo that we all know from the London Spitfire. Overwatch League winners. We know them through and through. Prophet is one of the best DPS in the world, and one of the most flexible players in the world. And in my opinion, will be the best DPS on this Seoul team. Gesture, however, he is still a really good main tank, but I think it really depends on the meta that Gesture falls into. He's got a really good Orisa, he's got a really good Winston, but his Reinhardt has been known to have a few issues. But again, it could be that it was more of a problem for London as a whole last year with goats and stuff like that they weren't doing so well in. Now, they've also signed Creative, the support player, as well. The question is, I was expecting Seoul to really push on, and they kind of didn't. When they signed Profit and Gesture, I thought, we're going to see quite a few moves here from Seoul, and they're going to become like this crazy Korean super team that people are just really going to struggle to deal with, because basically they're going to be the only team from Korea, and they're going to want to dominate. Now they're going to be playing at home. But I haven't seen any more from Seoul right now. The thing that makes me interested in Seoul right now, again, is the coaching lineup. They've now got Cheng-gun as their head coach. Now, if you don't know who Cheng-gun is, he was the head coach, I believe, of the London Spitfire when they won the league. And they also have MMA as assistant coach and Wizard Hyung as a strategic coach. Now, Wizard was at the Washington Justice last year, but had a very good reputation coming from LW Blue in the NYXL. He was with NYXL in the inaugural season. Yes, NYXL didn't win the league, but they did very well during that season. So a combination of Cheng-gun and Wizard Hyung is a really interesting coaching lineup. And this is another thing that may be able to push Seoul on. The question is with Seoul is, can the rest of the team keep up with the real star players on this team? Remember, they've now lost Fletter to the Shanghai Dragons. And I'm not sure whether they'll miss Fletter all that much from what I've seen from Fletter from Shanghai right now. But can the likes of their supports and their off-tanks keep up with the quality that Profit, Gesture, and some of their DPS can put out, like Fitz and Illicit? If they can't, then they might struggle. They might struggle to keep up, and Profit and Gesture might be regretting their moves. Again, it's not the end of the transfer window, and we could see more from Seoul Dynasty, and I would kind of expect to see more from Seoul Dynasty, but it remains to be seen. The jury is out with Seoul right now, but these signings are very good, and it definitely makes Seoul better, in my opinion, than what we saw last season, and it could see them into automatic playoffs. Just depends whether they can get this team working together properly. At number 3, we have the Philadelphia Fusion. So, this is an interesting one. Philadelphia Fusion had a pretty mediocre season last season after being runners-up in the inaugural season, and they decided to make some changes. Now, they've kept hold of Carpe, Poco, Sado, Boombox, EQO, but they've added Ivy from the Toronto Defiant. I think that's a really good DPS backup option. They've added Alarm from their University, which I think, again, is another really good support option. They've brought in Funny Astro from the Atlanta Reign. Now, this is actually pretty cool, because Funny Astro is an expert Lucio. I'm sure you've probably heard of him from the Lucio plays. And he also has a good range of supports on him, right? But he is a really good Lucio. And looking at the way Lucio is in the meta right now, it would pay dividends to have, at the moment, a really good Lucio on your team. And the way I look at this team right now, Funny Astro is the best Lucio on that team. So I think Funny Astro is a really good signing. Then when you come to Chipsa, Chipsa, really good Doomfist. And Doomfist is meta at the moment. Don't know whether he will be when the league starts, but if we go into a very heavy Doomfist meta, expect the Philadelphia Fusion to do well, because Chipsa should be having the time of his life. And if he doesn't, then, something's gone wrong somewhere. But by far the best signing for the Philadelphia Fusion is Fury. Now, Fury, again, signed from London Spitfire, is the off-tank. In the inaugural season was god-level off-tank with the D.Va plays, with being able to eat stuff. He is the best main tank at eating stuff when playing D.Va. Obviously, we don't see a lot of D.Va at the moment, but D.Va will come back eventually, I'm sure, because D.Va is very strong. But he's also very good on the Roadhog. We've seen him on the Zarya, so he's a really good all-round off-tank, and I think he's better than Poco. So I think there's an improvement here. Also, Sado, their main tank at the moment, right, there is a lot of questions over Sado, but I think Sado might work better with Fury than Poco. And if they can build up synergy, I think it will work. I think it will work. And at the moment, these transfers that have happened, for me, put Philadelphia above the likes of Seoul Dynasty right now. Seoul Dynasty I still think needs to see improvements. And then you've got the signing of Hisu. Now, Hisu is a fantastic, fantastic DPS player from Runaway. And yes, he will be ineligible at the start of the season. He won't be eligible until March the 25th. But Hisu, I would expect to become a star DPS player at the Philadelphia Fusion. And honestly, I think this is a really, really good signing for the Fusion. Because I want to see the Fusion do one thing. And that is try to move away from their reliance on Carpe. It's always a bugbear for me with the Fusion that I think sometimes they rely on Carpe a bit too much. And I would love to see Philadelphia Fusion move away from that and try and become a bit more well-rounded. But we will see. At number 2, we have the Houston Outlaws. Houston Outlaws have had a really, really good off-season so far. Not only have they got their ownership problem sorted out, which is really, really good and really pleasing to hear, but they have been picking up some really good players as well. So, when we look at this, they do actually have 12 players assigned active, but they aren't all tied down for next season. So, let's take a look at this first. The players they definitely have for 2020 are Hydration, Blase, Dante, Meko, Boink, and Repel. So these are all really good players. Boink was a really good support. Repel was with the Vancouver Titans last year, and again is a really, really good signing for the Houston Outlaws. Dante was a crucial pickup for the Houston Outlaws because they lacked a tracer in the inaugural season that could, really do decently and on those heroes, or those sorts of heroes. So they've got that flexibility now. Hydration was an amazing pickup because Hydration is really flexible. He's got that Orisa in his back pocket, but he's also got the DPS, the projectile DPS, so Hydration should be really good. Blase, hopefully he can return to his DPS role more than doing the off-tank role that he was doing at sometimes at the Boston Uprising. And then you have the off-tank Meko. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Meko, obviously at the NYXL for a long time, and this is a really, really fantastic pickup for the Houston Outlaws. Now, where Meko fits in here, it's going to take him perhaps a little bit of time to fit in because of the language barrier and stuff like that, but apparently it's a challenge he wanted to take on, which I think is really, really good. If you go on the active roster that they've got, the likes of Raucous and Boink obviously, Muma, Cormat, Jake, Linkser and Spree, I don't see all of these hanging around. I'm starting to struggle to see places for the likes of Cormat and Spree with Meko coming in. I'm not sure whether they really need them. Perhaps keep one as a backup, but the problem is with Spree and Cormat is they're not diverse, being brutally honest. Like, Cormat, very good at the Diva, Spree, very good at the Zarya, but, like, the era is you have a off-tank which can do it all. And at the moment, I don't see it. Now, Jake is another debatable one. Like, Jake is a good player, but I think the signing of Hydration may signal the end of Jake. Because I think, honestly, Jake isn't too far from perhaps retiring and going into casting. I honestly have thought that for a little bit. So, we might see Jake perhaps not too much next season. Linkser, I would expect them to keep hold of. So, when you put the likes of Linkser with Hydration, Blase, Dante, and then you've got Repel and Meko with Muma and perhaps another main tank, if they sign one, then you're looking at a pretty decent Houston Outlaws, and a Houston Outlaws that has improved massively on what we saw from them last season. But then we look at their coaching staff, and they've brought in Hureg. Now, Hureg, obviously, was a player for the Vancouver Titans last season, also played for London Spitfire in the Overwatch League, and played for Runaway, so he's got an incredible amount of experience at the very top level, and now he wants to go into coaching. How good of a coach he will be, we don't know, but that experience could be really, really good for the Houston Outlaws. And then we look at Harsha. Now, Harsha is their new head coach. Harsha was at the Vancouver Titans last season as a coach. So, again, another really good, experienced, top-level coach coming in for the Houston Outlaws. So this is looking good for Houston. This is really looking good for Houston, and perhaps we will see Houston get back to competing for playoff places like they were in the inaugural season, because they were actually quite a decent team in the inaugural season, but last season, just because of the backroom problems, they really, really struggled. But things are looking up for the Houston Outlaws, but it's time for our team at number 1. And at number 1, I've actually put the Paris Eternal. And the reason for this is they've signed 5 players so far. 3 of them are from Element Mystique, right? So we've got G, the DPS player, who will be eligible immediately. Sparkle, the other DPS player, who won't be immediately eligible because he's underage. And then Hambin, the off-tank player, who will become of age very, very early in the league season. So there's a lot going on here, right? And then they signed Smex, who is a British off-tank player, and No Smite, a new main tank. Now, there's ups and downs to this, but I think it makes a big difference to the way Paris Eternal work. Paris Eternal, you know, they were an all-European team, and that has now changed, and some Paris Eternal fans don't like that. I think it doesn't hurt to have some Korean in your team, and then if you've got some of the best European players, which, let's be honest, they've got Soon and the like, so they have got some of the best European players, you can really make it work if your coaches are good enough. Philadelphia Fusion made it work in the inaugural season, and they had players from all over the place. So it really doesn't matter. Get the guys that are best for the job, in my opinion. And I think in some areas, Paris have done that, and some areas, Paris haven't done that. And again, I keep saying the transfer window isn't over, so there could be more to come yet. I have very little doubt that Sparkle, Hambin and G will be very good players. Smex, I think, will also be a good player. Now, we had a lot of debate over the question of do they have a decent enough main tank in Benbest, and then they went and signed No Smite from the Hangzhou Spark, or the Academy team Bilibili Gaming, or whatever. So, No Smite is not a massive improvement on Benbest, but it is an improvement. And I think No Smite will work better with Hambin than Benbest would have. I think Benbest will work pretty well with Smex, and I think that's what this Paris team is looking at. They want a lot of flexibility and the ability to bring whole tank lineups and stuff like that in and out of the team. We may see more moves from Paris yet, but again, one thing that makes a big difference for me is the coaching lineup for the Paris Eternal. So they've had a big clear out and refreshed. A load of people have come out of the coaching lineup, and they brought in Element Mystique coach Rush as their head coach, which should be really beneficial considering Element Mystique have been on a barnstormer in Korea. They've been fantastic. Then we've got Aid, who was a player for the Toronto Defiant. Again, a lot of experience around the whole contenders scene and then Overwatch League as well. Then we have Levy from the Shanghai Dragons that they've signed as a coach. And then we have 9K, who has signed as a coach for Paris from the San Francisco Shock. And obviously he will have experience of winning the league with San Francisco Shock. So there's a lot of experience coming into the Paris Eternal, along with a lot of young blood and the players. And I think this could be really beneficial for the Paris Eternal, and it will change the look of the team. It will almost certainly propel them up the league. How far up the league, we don't know. But I think it will make a massive difference to the Paris Eternal and the way things looked, because let's be honest, they were pretty underwhelming last season. I don't think anyone can argue with that. But this has been longer than I wanted it to be. So those are my 5 teams that have changed for the better in this offseason so far. Again, I might update this in the future with more signings that might be coming out soon. But for now, I am still a bit ill. So bear with me if there's a lot of pauses. And I think I might be losing my voice. So, oh dear. That's all I can say. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.